Hi, this is session 3 of the discernment counseling, and this is all about what society teaches us to tolerate. And one of the first things that I ask couples that come into my sessions, whether they're coming in feeling like they're not quite a couple in a discernment process, or even coming into just couples therapy, I ask them what did they learn about relationships that was modeled to them by their parents, or kind of standard relationships that they had in their family, that they observed in their family. One of the biggest ways we learn about relationships is we watch how people do them. And sometimes we learn to tolerate all sorts of stuff, like levels of stress, the amount of responsibility that we take on, the position that we have in the family, the roles that we play, the things that we do, the tasks that we take on. So there's a whole lot of stuff that's almost like in our DNA. It's just genetically been given to us and we've accepted it. But what I want you to look at when you're looking at what you have tolerated in your relationship is to look at the very, very beginning of the relationship. And when maybe some of what you were doing in that part of the relationship was really trying to make it work. You were bridging the gap of the differences between both of you and also what you were good at. And there's nothing wrong with like, hey, I have all these strengths and I want to share all these strengths in my relationship. It's super easy for me to cook. It's super easy for me to do finances. It's very easy for me to do some of the carpentry and the heavy lifting physically in the family. That's not a problem at all. And you'll notice that each part of the partnership starts developing the certain things that they do. And this works for quite a bit of time, especially in the discovery period where it feels so new and so fresh. And then sometimes these roles get very old. Like you always have to cook, or you always have to worry about the money problems, or you always have to do the physical labor outside the house or inside the house. And at that point, and even prior to that, I always ask people to do some kind of planning sessions when they're starting to be in relationships and serious contemplative relationships, whether some of these assignments were just unconsciously taken on or taken up. And if others of these were ones that were very consciously decided. So if you look back in the beginning of your relationship, which was the part that you didn't mind doing? And what part of the relationship did you start feeling like you had resentment for? And resentment is a killer, right? Because in our models of relationship, I bet we can see the energy of resentment pretty strongly in relationships. I always like to see, is there also the energy of love? And is there also the energy of connection and joy and laughter in the relationships? And I know in some families there's not, and in other families there's a ton. And there's in another family, it's just common sense that you'd be really respectful to the other person and talk to them in certain ways. If they were your partner, you and them had a special partnership agreement, like having heads of family or in exclusive relationships. But we start tolerating a lot and not talking about what we're tolerating, and all of this goes underground. And so I wanted you to think about this in a few ways and jot a few notes down if it would be helpful. So I want you to first write a list, ideally, of what do you feel like a good partner is? And that's a good partner to you. And what traits would they have to have? And what kinds of things would they have to do? And what would you expect from them? So take a minute and write that. Good qualities of your partner. What kinds of role would they take? What kinds of things would they do? And what kinds of things would you expect of them in a good partnership relationship? And so sometimes when we start our partnerships, we're really young and we might not know how to do a ton of stuff. But as a year or a decade goes by, we might become very efficient in lots and lots of things. We might grow up, right? Because that's what happens in relationships as two people grow up. And sometimes they grow up very differently. And sometimes they become very, very capable in the time frame that they are in relationship, much more capable than they were when they first started. So I want you to look at that list and think about, circle the things that are not required anymore, to be a good partner to you? And then really put a check next to everything that you think is required to be a good partner. And then I want you to also think about the things that aren't required anymore to be a good partner to you. Where did you learn that that was good partnership characteristics? Where did you learn that? So in this world, we can, and a lot of people do, and they just need to acknowledge it, and because it's true for almost every couple relationship, but every coupling has a very unique way of doing that because it's based on the two unique people that are coupling and personalities that are coupling in a certain way. So I want you to talk a little bit to yourself about what's unique about your relationship. Um, and what is that uniqueness that's been really a draw to you? And what is that uniqueness that might have been something that you learned to tolerate? And what's the difference between those two things? Because I think sometimes when we're in a discernment process, we really have to look at where our ideas came from, where our philosophy about relationships came from. And maybe it's time to grow that up. And maybe it's also time to like create another vision for yourself about the kind of relationship that's going to work for you now at such and such stage of life or after so and so amount of decades that you've been together. So what's going to work for you now? What kind of partnership? And that's what we have to start talking about in the discernment model. If you're rolling up to your sleeves to see, does this relationship have a chance? Is there a way for us to get back together? So to end this, what I want to do is to help you have a different prompt. And it might be turning around like what you were taught to tolerate to what do you now expect to be different in a relationship that would feel healthier to you. And whatever you felt like you were taught to tolerate that you really don't want to tolerate anymore, I want you to think about another version of that that you could actually expect that would make you feel like you're in a healthier connection with someone. So, um, society just guides us in certain ways to think about certain things. And a lot of times, and we'll see this in social media, that it makes us feel bad about ourselves. So now you can turn that around. And instead of feeling like, oh, I accepted all these things that didn't feel good, well, now I'm going to start turning some of those around because I want to be in a relationship where I feel really healthy and not bad about myself or the other person. I want to be in a relationship where I really feel like we have the freedom to kind of cross lines and talk about these things and change our roles. There's something about being able to change your roles or your expectations in a relationship because then you really get to feel like what it is when that other person does that thing that they always do. Like you get to appreciate them more, and it would really break down those walls of resentment, and that would increase appreciation in the relationship. So something to really, really think about, and look forward to seeing you in the next session.